We took a family road trip to Montreal from Toronto. This video is going to be about that experience. It might help you come to your own conclusion about what it's like to do this with a Tesla Model Y or something similar. Toronto to Montreal is around 535 kilometers. That's 331 miles. It's mostly highway, no significant changes in elevation, and we normally need about 5.5 hours to do this drive. A lot of Canadians do this drive on the regular. Toronto and Montreal are the two most populous cities in Canada. The Model Y long-range dual-motor all-wheel drive claims 509 kilometers, that's 316 miles of range. So this will obviously involve a stop to recharge. My performance Model Y claims even a bit less. That's 468 kilometers, 291 miles, because of its heavier rims and grippier tires. So it will be interesting to repeat this experiment again when I put narrower, lighter winter tires on this car. That might make my charge time a little less, but charging is going to be required one way or the other. Until battery technology makes its next big leap, supercharging is essential for this trip. You have a few options for supercharging, but there's only really one good option, and that's Kingston, a city that's located directly in between Toronto and Montreal, good old Division Street. There's also Belleville, which is 353 kilometers from Montreal, 177 from Toronto, so a little closer to Toronto. The extra 25 miles of range that I gave up by having a performance Model Y versus a standard Model Y might make Belleville not really a viable option for me, but a very good option for many. So the charger in Kingston is 150 kilowatts, Belleville is 120, so both are good, but neither are the latest V3 250 kilowatt style charger. We have those elsewhere in Canada, but as for Kingston, if you check supercharge.info, there appears to be a 250 kilowatt in the works, but it's in a permit stage. So too bad for us this time. The car was fresh out of a ceramic coating, which my son promptly smeared. Let me know if you think I should actually put my badges back on or if the stealth look is a good one. Also, toss me a like/subscribe if this is useful. The car was loaded up with 2.5 people, me, my wife, and our 3-year-old son. We didn't pack too light as I had some heavy catalogs to deliver for work. It was only a little lighter on the return because the catalogs were replaced with delicious Montreal Middle Eastern foods. We made a short stop at Garnier Bakery to grab some Iranian-style flatbreads as well as some flaky croissants. With the Canada Geese having safely made it across the street, we were on our way. With just under the theoretical maximum of 461 kilometers to start, we should have reached Kingston with 35% charge, supercharge there for some time, and get to Montreal with about 12%. Besides the range-related experience, I must say that this trip really gave me a chance to get better acquainted with autopilot. I don't have the full self-driving on this car, but as long as you are not leaving your lane, autopilot is essentially the same as full self-driving. The system does actually significantly reduce the mental and physical burden of driving long distances. I've used Volvo's system, the Tesla system is better, but there are issues that are desperately in need of refinement. That's not what this episode is about, but the car did brake suddenly when we approached an overpass, which it must have misinterpreted as some sort of stationary object. It's also just very unnerving because the car tracks dead center in the lane, even when the vehicle in the adjacent lane is a scary truck or a poorly centered car in general. Any human driver would bias just a little bit away from that car or that truck, especially when the shoulder permits it, but autopilot does no such thing. And you wind up just tugging the steering wheel to make it happen, and that deactivates autopilot. Again, overall, I must say autopilot, when used purely in open road and predictable situations and disabled when the human touch is better, affords you a significant net benefit in the quality of the drive. It's easy to adjust your speed and your follow distance. I just find that it eases the general emotional and physical burden of driving because you know you're not in it alone and your grip can relax just a little bit. Your heel and calf muscle can just relax one notch, and that just helps you go a little longer without needing a break. So back to the range. We got to Kingston with 28%, not 35% as predicted. Fine. Between air conditioning, my speed, and so on, it's normal. Now, we don't normally take a 40-minute stop when we drive a gasoline car. A gas fill-up takes closer to 5 minutes. A restroom visit and drive-through might take an extra 10 or 15. So a 40-minute stop was acceptable. But here's why this is the low point on this experience for us. While we were fortunate that one supercharging style remained available upon our arrival, it was not the case for people that got there even 5 minutes after me. There were at least 3 Teslas waiting to charge as we were getting ready to head back out. With these 150 kilowatt chargers, the charge rate is split and reduced when the charging station has a high occupancy, which is just inevitable with so many people here. It's not obvious how and where to wait your turn. I'd hate to be either of these guys who have to ask people, hey, how many more minutes, while exchanging awkward glances, marking their territory, or resorting to blocking cars that are charging. I don't want to take a spot away from someone who's in a rush, but I also don't want to have to engage in unnecessary conversations. So there should be more superchargers, and there should be an obvious waiting process. So we charged up enough till we saw 15% as the predicted remaining range for our arrival in Montreal. And all was well and good pretty early on. Again, I saw that number drop to 9 or 8% as the car realized the adjustments that are appropriate. Perhaps it's my speed or my heavy load in the trunk, not sure. At one point, it predicted I'd arrive with exclamation point range. So that wasn't a good feeling. We figured out that exclamation point means less than 5%. So truth be told, I drove with a bit more consciousness of my range at that point. I drove slower, I avoided accelerations to pass, I kept my eyes on the screen, and that's not how this is supposed to be. But anyway, we got to my in-laws' house in Montreal with about 12% remaining. Not bad at all. My experience tells you that you should always make sure you have at least 10 to 15% predicted remaining range in any trip you plan. We stayed in Montreal for 2 nights, and here's how I handled charging while there. I brought along this 50-foot extension cable with Nema 1430 ends, along with my mobile connector and an adapter for that Nema 1430 end. So the link to buy this thing is in the description below. It's not an affiliated link or anything, so you could just pick anything else that looks like it that does the same thing. I chose Nema 1430 because it's what is commonly used for clothes dryers. It's 240 volts, and the mobile connector will limit it to 24 amps, even though the circuit can take 30. So that's 5.7 kilowatts, 21 miles per hour, also known as 34 kilometers per hour. So perfect for overnight charging. Not all homes will have a 50-foot run from the dryer to the garage. It might be far more, or any indoor access between the home and the garage, or a garage altogether. So you can't rely on charging with a standard receptacle, because that's only 12 amps at 240 volts. That's 1.4 kilowatts. For a 74 kilowatt hour battery like the Model 3 or the Model Y, the math tells you that it's 50 plus hours to go from 0% to 100%. So that's more than 2 days. So luckily we have this 240 volt NEMA 1430 situation. This particular receptacle wasn't properly grounded. The Tesla told us that when you try to plug in. So I had to deal with that first and foremost, which is not the job for a non-electrician. So special thanks to my brother-in-law and my father-in-law and my brother who checked in on my work from afar. You have to anticipate such obstacles and make sure you have a fallback. There are a handful of superchargers in Montreal. Plenty more in Toronto, but anyway, the ones in Montreal are limited to, some of them are limited to 72 kilowatts, others have limited hours. They really should have far more of these in Montreal. I hope that changes over time. When we're not in a pandemic, it's very normal for me to head out on the long return to Toronto after having done some city driving, perhaps from a restaurant, so the supercharger network really has to improve. Heading back, I had nearly a full charge to go. Things went well, but when we got to Kingston, what I had feared on the way in actually came to be. As we got nearer and nearer to the charger, the screen had the info shown that only 2 of the 6 stalls were available as we were approaching. Like an unfolding nightmare, it went down to 1 and then 0. And when we got there, indeed I had to wait around, not knowing where to wait, whether or not to make eye contact. It took about 5 minutes of waiting, not long at all. But the people that came just minutes after me were not so lucky. Again, there were 3, in this case Tesla Model 3s, waiting by the time I was ready to go. I know for certain their wait exceeded 10 minutes. Again, while the route planner predicted 25 minutes of charging, it took far longer because the 150 kilowatts was split, as all the spots were full. Again, I saw 99 kilowatts for a moment, but mostly it was hanging around 70 or 60 kilowatts. That means we should have been there for 25 minutes, but it was actually closer to 40 minutes. My wife and I recall driving back from Montreal on Civic Holiday 2 years earlier when my son was only a 1-year-old, and that was a miserable ride. An extra 40 minutes like this would just be a deal breaker for us in that situation. The fact that I had to devote so much mental energy to my range in this process makes me reach my conclusion, which is I don't plan to use this car for this trip again in the immediate future. At a minimum, the 250 kilowatt chargers in Kingston would have to be open, and weather would have to be confirmed not a problem. There is one other issue, which is the fact that this car does not have a spare tire or run flat tires. How is that even allowed? I had to buy this tire repair kit separately, which I really hope I never have to open. Tesla's roadside assistance is really all you have in that case when you get a major flat. And I don't know what Tesla's roadside assistance is like. And I would love to hear from any of you that have that experience anywhere in the world, including Canada. And that would really help me decide if I do this again. I hope that helped. Thank you for your like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.